My 2021 coverage of TCT360 is sponsored by E3D. Their new Rapid Change Revo combines a toolless nozzle swap, all-in-one ceramic heater core and Revo micro cold end to give your printer a lighter, safer, quick change hot end system. Check the link in the description to find out more. Hello everyone, this is going to be my last video now from TCT360 2021. Hopefully you've enjoyed the coverage that I've provided so far, and hopefully you'll enjoy this one too. This one's going to be a little bit different, as you may have guessed already. It's not going to be a single company. This is just going to be a bit of a kind of best of the rest or other things that I saw at TCT show that are kind of worth looking at. Our first stop today is the booth from Creality, which they were sharing with 3D Prima Nordic and Technology Outlet. So some quick news, 3D Prima has purchased Technology Outlet. So they were two kind of retailers within the Europe area, serving definitely the UK amongst others. So now they're presumably going to be under the, well, both under the 3D Prima brand. So being a Creality based booth, they obviously had Creality printers on show. Being a Creality booth, there were obviously Creality printers to look at. One of those was the Ender 7, which I'd not seen before, and the other was the CR200B. So the Ender 7, you may be familiar with Joel's content regarding this kind of supposedly high-speed Core XY machine that can supposedly print at 200 or was it 250 millimeters a second. As you can see, they didn't really have it printing particularly fast at the show, but there's a whole number of reasons why that would be. So we can't necessarily determine maximum performance from it, but it was definitely interesting to be able to take a closer look at the machine just to see kind of what's going on, what components are being used, and what I can maybe expect if I do ever take a look at one. The CR200B is a fully enclosed machine, has a door on the front. I kind of was apprehensive about opening the door in case it just shut down the print, but nobody stopped me and it didn't seem to. So there's no safety latch or anything on the door. You can just open it at any point you want in the print. While the printing quality didn't look particularly amazing, it was definitely hampered by a top-down light, so that made it look significantly worse than it actually was. In terms of pricing, the Creality Ender 7 is definitely the more expensive of the two, at around twice the price. But obviously different functionality between these two printers, so they could both be worth taking a look at later down the road. The next booth to take a look at is Bowyear Engineering. I'm not exactly sure how they would pronounce it, but they had this enormous printer kind of on show, and it's an absolute tank. Unfortunately, some regulations at the show prevented them from running it for safety reasons, for some reason. Which is kind of unfortunate because it would have been impressive to see it moving, but unfortunately that's not something we got. In terms of specifications, we are looking at a Core XY IDEX with upcoming tool changing in there too. The whole thing is controlled by a Duet 2 control board. The heated bed is running off mains, as you might expect. And the hot-ended extruder is a E3D Hemira. There were a couple of weird decisions, as I say. The lead screws looked like they were large enough to lift a house, whilst the belts for the XY axis were only 6mm. It's a little bit strange. When you've got something this size and using this amount of material, you might start to expect maybe to see NEMA 23 motors, 9mm or 3mm pitch belts, but that was not the case. As far as their reason for doing it, well, it just seems like they wanted to, so they did. That's a good enough reason for me though. It is a pretty impressive machine to look at. Moving on now, let's take a look at what 3D Evo has to offer. You may be familiar with this brand if you watch CNC Kitchen. The new thing that they were showing off at TCT 360 was this kind of all-in-one shredder, granulator, monster machine. So you've got these big grinding wheels which sit at the shredder, I believe goes first. And this just basically takes the plastic input, in this case bottle caps, but it could be kind of anything, well, any recyclable plastic really. And this first portion, the shredder, basically turns it into strings of plastic. It's not right to the final processing stage. It's just the first step, which takes it down from a full product into a shredded long kind of string. You can see here where all those granules come out the bottom in that little tray. Well, it's actually quite a big tray, but that's just the side of it. You can see that they had quite a few materials on show, and presumably these are a lot of the materials that they've processed using their machines. You can see they're all labelled, so there's quite a few different materials here. I'm not familiar with most of these, but I think it gives a pretty good demonstration of how many materials you can recycle using their products. Alongside TCT 360 this year, there was another show called Interplus UK, and this was basically all about injection molding. So there are a huge number of modern manufacturing machines, all doing their relative dancing maneuvers, and obviously a lot of injection molding machines too. So I thought it'd be quite cool to basically take a look, take a couple of pictures just to have a look. It's not an industry I'm intimately familiar with, so I can't tell you what all these parts do, for example. I've really no idea, but they look pretty cool and it was quite interesting to see, so I thought you might be interested in looking too. So this machine is making kind of small plastic cups, and you can see on the left side of the image, well, central to left side, you have the kind of template parts being added. You can see them being dropped onto those sort of cone-shaped things that then get dragged into the machine right at the back there, operating at quite a high rate of speed. On the carriage there, you can see not only is it moving exceptionally fast, it's literally moving maybe 1.5 meters or 2 meters in a fraction of a second, but you see a nice big drag chain there, or cable chain, energy chain, depending on what you want to call it. Moving around to the other side of the machine, we can follow where these cups are going, and you can see they're getting inserted into the tool on the right here, where the opposite side is coming in and presumably applying some pressure and plenty of heat and injecting some plastic for the base of the cup. If we move back a little bit, you can see in a little bit more detail exactly how this machine is moving and what it's doing with the controller there on the right. And just to give you an example of how loud this machine is, I did capture some audio as well. Flipping back around to the other side, we can see this moving carriage that was obviously picking up parts on the left is now depositing them on the right, where they seem to cool for a few seconds before being grabbed by some cuts and dropped down onto a conveyor belt, where they're stacked in stacks of about 15 or 20, and then the conveyor belt just moves them down towards the end. Of course, my video wouldn't be complete without another mention from E3D. So I hadn't shown the E3D tool changer in any of my other videos, so thought I'd give you a quick update on what we can see with that. You might be able to see all of the hot end tools have been swapped out for Hemira Revo. The printing speeds were what you would normally expect for the tool changer. Nothing hugely outrageous, but just still quite impressive to look at. One special thing of note was this small filament kind of nozzle cleaner tool thing. I can't remember what it's called, but it has this very small silicone brush and a little servo motor. It kind of squeegees a blob of filament by the side, and then the little servo latch kind of pushes it down the hole. The whole thing is also now being run by a Duet 3 rather than the older Duet 2. And we've also got a Raspberry Pi computer in there, which I don't think it had before, but may well have done, I just might have missed it. Lastly, there's just a few more images of stuff that I thought was particularly cool, like this bizarre wheel design, which seems to have been formed by some sort of generative design process, and is clearly done using Fusion 360, because you can see the Fusion logo in the middle there. It's quite an impressive piece of kit, and the lighting just hit it in just the right way, because the sun was going down, and it just looked pretty cool. So couldn't help myself but take a nice picture of that. There's another big thing. Yes. This is the 3D's Revo 6 and Micro next to a banana, just for scale. The other thing is a nice big, there we go, fan blade sort of thing, which presumably has been printed on a big rep printer, which are really massive. They didn't have one on show there. Not at this booth anyway. I don't think there was one anywhere else. but it just kind of goes to show how big a part you can print using 3D printing if you have the right size printer. So that's it from me today. Hopefully it was interesting for you to see what went on at TCT 360 this year. There was quite a lot to look at, but also a lot of it was industrial, so it wasn't necessarily that interesting for us to make a video about. Hopefully though, you've enjoyed my coverage of the E3D launch and a few of the other more consumer focused brands that were talking about stuff at TCT 360. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.